Greetings, and thank you for taking the time to view this presentation. My name is Dan Sullivan, and I am a student in the Master of Science in Sport Management graduate degree program at the University of Southern Indiana. As you can see from our first slide here, the title of the case study is The Conformity to Gender Norms. The abstract here on slide 2, I will not read in its entirety word for word, just the first few sentences. Gender roles and gender ideology can reflect attitudes that society have placed on what it may mean to be masculine or feminine. The sport industry has been characterized to more closely adopt a conventional masculine approach. So the framework here for female athletes, as well as male, can be faced with challenges when attempting to navigate these conventional gender norms. So the purpose of this research case study was to evaluate whether athletes that identify as either female or male differed from their student peers regarding conformity to those feminine and masculine gender norms. While several journal articles were referenced in the case study, the two articles listed here were instrumental in helping me build my framework for the case study, and ones that I found myself referring back to on a number of occasions. Steinfeld et al. 2011 evaluated gender norms and body image issues that female athletes had in comparison to students who were non-athletes. It's one of the first articles I came across where there was a conformity to masculine and conformity to feminine inventory model being used by Parent and Marati. And I also found this article interesting as the information that was being collected was in reference to how the athletes perceived themselves as opposed to how others were perceiving the athletes. The other article, and I apologize for the pronunciation here or mispronunciation, Boszkowski et al. In 2020, another comparison of feminine and masculine norms here. However, they were looking at how male and female athletes cope with stress. Again, an inventory model was used for assessing stressful situations as well as the psychological effects. This was another study where self-perception questions were asked regarding the femininity and masculinity. The purpose statement and research questions here were referenced and alluded to in the abstract, where the purpose of this study was to evaluate whether self-identifying female and self-identifying male student athletes differed from their non-athlete student peers in relation to gender norms. So one of the questions being, do athletes identify as female have a lower level of conformity to feminine norms than non-athlete females? Do athletes that identify as female have a higher level of conformity to masculine norms than non-athlete females? Do athletes identifying as males have a higher level of conformity to masculine norms than non-athlete males? And finally, do athletes identifying as male have a lower level of conformity to feminine norms than non-athlete males? Before we move on and discuss the methods and findings from my case study, I wanted to note some of the past findings from the articles that were influential in helping me build a framework for this study. So as an example from the previous slide, Steinfeld et al. 2011, in that study where female athletes were being evaluated for femininity, masculinity, and body image, it was noted that the female athletes did not respond with a lower level of feminine conformity than their non-athlete counterparts, which actually rejected the author's hypothesis at the time. However, the female athletes did respond with a higher level of masculine conformity than their non-athlete student peers, which did support the author's hypothesis. Again, apologies on the mispronunciation. Boszkowski et al. 2020. While female athletes did respond with a higher level of overall femininity, there was little difference regarding the psychological masculinity between male and female athletes. So the authors noted essentially that male and female athletes share a similar competitive mindset and attitude, which could be compared to Steinfeld et al.'s findings with respect to male and females' attitudes towards winning and competitiveness. A brief summary of the method used for this case research study. SurveyMonkey was used to create a questionnaire asking for some demographic information, as well as the conformity to feminine and conformity to masculine questions. There were 50 questions in total, 4 demographic questions that were multiple choice, and then 46 questions related to the conformity to masculine and conformity to feminine gender norms. There were 23 masculine, 23 feminine, and these were highly abbreviated versions of Parent and Moradi's inventory models. I chose to abbreviate those mainly to keep the survey timely, so the students would actually finish them on time, which each survey took about 5 minutes to complete. The conformity questions were built on a Likert type scale with options of strongly disagree, disagree, agree, or strongly agree. A link to the survey was emailed out to the students that were approved on the college campus to participate. And then SurveyMonkey was also used to analyze some of the data, as well as an export to Microsoft Excel for further analysis. In discussing the results for this case research, unfortunately, a limitation of this study was that all of the participants identified as student athletes and none of the participants identified as students only. So with all 4 of the research questions wanting to compare student athletes to student only, I was not able to tie the data back directly to any of those 4 questions, support, reject, or theorize. However, there was data pulled from the survey, and as noted on this slide, there was some interesting findings. So yes, the female athletes did respond with higher overall feminine gender norm mean scores, just as male athletes responded with higher overall masculine norm mean scores. However, the subscales that broke those feminine and masculine norms up into different categories did not necessarily follow male to masculine, female to feminine. So as an example, one of the masculine categories titled winning showed little or no difference in the mean scores between male and female athletes. And in turn, the female athletes' mean scores actually rated higher than the male athletes with regards to self-reliance, which was considered a masculine subscale. The self-identified male athletes also showed little or no difference, and in some cases rated higher in mean score than the feminine categories, where they were involvement with care for children and romantic relationships. Professor Smith had worked with all of us on these case research papers, and he had asked us to make some notes with regards to scholarly versus personal takeaways. In general, I was able to live through some of the heartache and the knowledge of finding out that limitations can break a case research study and be extremely frustrating. Valuable data can still be collected, of course. However, the authors may be unable to support or reject a hypothesis or adequately answer research questions that they've posed in their purpose statement. Specific to this study, albeit this is a very small sample size and the findings should in no way be generalized. However, there is an implication here that further research is needed to determine if there are shifts in ideology that are present in society with what is considered masculine and what is considered feminine when looking at some of the gender norm questions that were asked. I'd like to conclude, at least from this perspective on a scholarly takeaway, with a reminder from the author of our textbook, Jay Coakley, that in societies where many people have access to science-based information about sex and gender and have personal experiences to support that information, there's a growing tendency to question all or part of orthodox gender ideology. On a personal note, I would just like to comment here on how completing this project was a major accomplishment for me. This took me way out of my comfort zone and allowed me to do research on a topic that actually I thought I knew something about, but clearly I did not. And I did thoroughly enjoy researching this project. Working through the struggles of the assignment, the sense of accomplishment and being able to create something from beginning to end that not just an abstract or not just an introduction, but having a literature review, a method, a result, a discussion, and a reference all put together was very satisfying. So I just wanted to thank you, Professor Smith, for all of your time and patience.